What's up, y'all? It is time for all the Jimmy boys and Jimmy girls to gather round for yet another installment of the Jimmy Boy Hour. I'm your host, Omarcomin. Today we have yet another Ninth Age Fantasy Battles 2.0 Battle Report. And baby, this is a spicy one. So, to dive right in, I had a 4,500 point game against a German player named Blasdeox, who apparently works night shifts at some kind of German factory or something. Who the fuck knows? I've never met him before, so it was interesting to play with someone new. And I won't lie to you, when I joined his table, he was on an open table on Universal Battle. I probably sat in there for about 15 minutes thinking to myself, this is not a list I really want to play against. He had pretty ugly, pig-headed, awful gunline list sitting on the table. I guess insofar as elves can run a gunline, that just looked like the least fucking fun thing to play against I had ever seen. Basically what we're dealing with here is a unit of 20 Queen's Guard, a unit of almost 30 Sea Guard, 3 repeaters, and 3 very small units of fast cavalry. So, with a scattering of very ridiculously overpowered highborn elves characters. So, I almost didn't want to play this game. I had a pretty good feeling. I knew how it was going to go to begin with, but I acquiesced and we rolled some dice. I'm kind of glad we did it. It turned out to be pretty fun and pretty interesting. An emotional game, a roller coaster of a game, and I hope you enjoy it here. So here we are at deployment. The secondary objective here is King of the Kill. And we are on a counter thrust deployment on map 2, so one of the more open maps of the ETC map pack, which is a blessing for an army like mine. And in deployment I placed the warrior unit nearest to that impassable terrain first. He countered with the riders in the center near the wall. I placed my vanguarding warrior unit near the impassable house on the left side, and then I think he placed his fast cav on the far left as well in the west. And then from there, I think I started placing cannons. Yeah, I placed my cannons, and then as soon as he dropped his third piece, I dropped everything for the first turn. Maybe not the wisest move. I think he could have out-deployed me or counter-deployed me a little bit better with that option, but I think he made pretty creative use of cover here and set up a pretty nasty firing lane or bowling alley for me to wander down. The objective in this game was claimed by him first as the wall in the center. And I said, fuck you, asshole, and I claim that as well. So the only scoring objective is that one piece of terrain, the wall in the center of the map. So I deployed the rest of my units in the typical battle line formation, pretty much at max distance, so as far forward as I could possibly be, and claimed the first turn. My vanguarding unit of warriors moved up its 12 to rejoin the battle line essentially after serving its purpose to push him back on his deployment, and then I dropped my 2 scouting units of rangers in the east to threaten probably the most dangerous non-Death Star unit on his side, the Knights Rima. So they are going to have to deal with 22 shots. It's long range, but 22 shots per turn if they don't charge. And they have an 18-inch charge to deal with there, so not super long, but not super short either. What else should we talk about here? His spells. So he's got two casters. He's got a shaman with 2 instances of Awaken the Beast, Healing Waters, and the Oaken Throne, and then he's got a Pyromancer with that Scorching Salvo, which is an absolutely ridiculous spell. Flaming Swords, Fireball, and the attribute, I think. That's pretty much it for deployment. What else should I mention here? I think that's about it. I haven't opted to try the Cragwarden Rangers yet. This game sort of came upon me before I could make those edits and see if I liked them, so I still just standard Rangers here, no musician, so maybe we'll see how that turns out. Yeah, that's it for deployment. So here we go, end of Dwarvenhold's turn 1. Start pushing forward. Decide I basically need to get up into his face as quickly as I possibly can. His fast cavalry units are really not that big of a threat to me at the moment, except insofar as they can slow down my advance. So really need to focus on getting into his face and getting into combat as quickly as I possibly can. Magic phase, it looks like I didn't get anything in except for a Rune of Revocation on those Highborn Lancers in the center. Tried to advance pretty cohesively and just sort of take over the field and work my way in and around his flanks. Is basically the plan here. To fuck this pig, I can't really hit it head on. You kind of got to take it from the back and the side, you know what I'm saying? So the goal here is not to divert any units to deal with potentially a war machine or backline attack by that western unit of Highborn Lancers. I basically need to just keep pushing forward, and so that's what we do. We push up as cohesively as we can, and while staying fairly spread out so that I still have a little bit of movement available to me. And in shooting phase, the 22 shots from the Rangers managed to deal a single solitary wound to the ridiculous Knights Rima, who have the 1-up armor save and I think a 6-up ward. But still, that weakens the unit, which is certainly a bonus. It makes them slightly less threatening and slightly less dangerous to my infantry units. So that's a major positive. And it looks like my cannon on the hill managed to hit the bolter on the right in the east and do, I think, 2 wounds to that. So that's a nice bonus as well. And that concludes Dwarf's turn 1. So here we're looking at end of Highborn Elves turn 1. The Knights Rima in the east declared their 18-inch charge on the 10-man unit of Rangers and failed, luckily for me. Had they made it in there, it would have been pretty devastating. There's almost no way that unit of Rangers... it's possible, actually. They could have kept their steadfast. A slight misdeployment on my part. I think had he made it in there, he would have been able to maximize in such a way that the 12-man unit of Rangers would not have been able to flank. However, when I noticed this, it would have required me to move to make the adjustment to give them that flank charge, should the 10-man unit be the subject of the charge. And then they would have suffered a pretty drastic shooting penalty. So opted not to do that, which may not have been super wise. Obviously the optimal play would have been to deploy correctly. But hey, this is Jimmy Boy hours. This is the types of high-level gameplay you can expect out of a little Jimmy Boy like me. Let's see here. So he only declared the 1 charge. In terms of movement, did absolutely fuck all because he's playing a filthy gun line. and I started to empathize with all the other players out there who have been confronting Dwarven gun lines for the last 20 odd years. So if you play this style, you should die a slow and painful death, and yeah, no spoilers here. So he moves up in the center. His only movement are obviously with the 2 Highborn Lancers. Those are basically the only two units he can move. So he moves his Highborn Lancers in the center up to slow down my advance and chaff me up. And he moves the other unit of Highborn Lancers to the back line to begin threatening my war machines. So nasty, nasty business that. In his magic phase, I begin to start feeling the pain that this ridiculous list can put out. So he got through, I believe he got 2 spells through here. No, I think he just got the 1. So he got Scorching or Flaming Swords through, and he got it through on a very high roll. So I allowed it to pass, but I devoured it. So Flaming Swords, for those of you who don't know, offers a +1 to wound modifier, which when you're shooting strength 3 arrows against resilience 4 dwarves is pretty substantial to get that additional integer on your wound rolls. So didn't want to have to deal with that for the rest of the game, so devoured that as quickly as I possibly could. And I believe he failed his next casting rolls, so that was the only spell that made it through, and it'll be gone for the rest of the game. However, in shooting, it sort of did the needful. You'll see he killed 5, looks like 6 actually. I wonder how he did that. I think he did get Scorching Salvo in as well, because there's no reason, I don't see how there could be wounds off 4 units if he didn't. So he got Flaming Swords and killed at least 5 Kingsguard with those shots on the stupid ass volley fire, and then managed to do a handful of other wounds to the warriors with the Queensguard. And then I'm pretty sure he got in Scorching Salvo, which is a 24-inch aura D3 +1 strength 4 hits. So against an army like mine, that is an awful lot of strength 4 hits to have to contend with when you're, and it slows the game down tremendously. I don't know, like, it's just a stupid spell. I thank God, or I guess I thank Tiny or whoever the fuck is responsible for Res 4 on the dwarves, but those Res 4 or strength 4 hits don't do a tremendous amount against dwarves, considering, you know, they're resilience 4, and they also have 5 up or better armor save. So generally speaking, managed to save most of the wounds caused by the Scorching Salvo, but it really becomes a misery as this game goes on. Yeah, so just waiting through the shooting, waiting through the magic, and we move on. So we are looking at end of Dwarven Hold's turn 2. Yeah, that's right. End of Dwarven Hold's turn 2, so we are continuing with the game plan of taking the field as quickly as possible, getting in his face, and getting ready to smash some ass. Our advance was stymied a little bit by the Highborn Lancer chaff unit. I charged with the westernmost unit of warriors, and then he fled when I charged with and held, and then the second warrior unit from the left I also charged with, and he chose to flee from that unit. So I think I had charge rolls to catch on a 6 and a 9 for each unit respectively. The westernmost unit did catch them and kill them, and the other unit failed charge and stumbled forward, I think 3 inches or so. So that sort of caused a little bit of disruption in my advance, which will be problematic later on, but for now is kind of okay. I do have that unit of warriors that managed to catch the Lancers, pressed up pretty good and far, and are able to threaten a charge on the Bolter or on the Queen's Guard in their next turn. My miners fail to arrive on ambush, but I actually think that's a good thing. Arriving too early without having support charges to the front of his big shooting units would basically be a kiss of death for them. They'd just turn around, shoot the shit out of them, and then turn back around in the subsequent turn. So yeah, glad for once they didn't arrive in their first turn. In my magic, I got through a really nice magic phase for once. My opponent is a believer in trying to one dice Dwarven spells to maximize the number he can dispel. So occasionally that backfires, and in this case it did. So I managed to get Resilience through on the center Warrior unit, Gleaming through on the center Kingsguard unit, and Gleaming through on the easternmost Kingsguard unit, which is a big help in surviving a lot of the salvos coming from these 40 odd. It's more actually when you count his characters, but a ridiculous number of strength 3 and strength 4 shooting, and then the bolters. Looks like my cannon managed to finish, or one or both of my cannons managed to finish that his westernmost bolter off in shooting, and it appears the 22 Rangers managed to chip off another wound from the Knight's Rima, so feeling pretty good about that. If that can continue, I think that's, I mean, it's a little bit of an overinvestment on my part, and those Rangers kind of need to be in the action against the Death Star to weaken it, but if they can keep the Rima busy or weakened, then I think that's a pretty good trade. No combats, so we move on. So here is end of Highborn Elves turn 2. A whole lot starts to happen here as we continue to push down the shooting gallery into the face of his shooting units. I think he's at short range now on at least some of his units, and I'm starting to feel the pain and get a little prickly. Movement, the only noteworthy things are that he charged my cannon, that was to be expected, and he moved up to chaff my warriors. Well, I don't know if it's exactly chaff, but moved up to stop the advance of my warriors and my nearest and largest Kingsguard unit on the west hand side, or the east side of the map. And well, we'll get to that, but so that is his movement. In his magic phase, it looks like he got Altered Sight in on the Sea Guard, which gives them adds 1 to their aim score, so they're hitting on, I think, something stupid like 2s now. I think this is the first turn, or maybe the second turn, he got Scorching Salvo in. Twice in this game he cast Scorching Salvo on 4 or 5 dice, I think on 4 dice, when I was sitting on either 5 or 6 dice, and twice I failed to dispel with more dice than he had thrown. So that was exceedingly frustrating, because I was, I didn't have really any unit buffs that I needed to concern myself with all that much, so I was basically saving my dice to stop Scorching Salvo, and to watch it go in twice on fewer power dice was really frustrating, and it results in a pretty solid number of wounds despite the strength 4 and the armor, no armor piercing on the spell. But yeah, you see here I lost a full unit of warriors, in fact, to shooting and magic, likely weakened by magic, and then shot off the table by his bolters and his 40 odd shots from the Sea Guard and Queen's Guard. He did get Healing Waters in on his Queen's Guard, which I believe I let him have. Ultimately not too concerned with a 5-up regen even in combat. They have no other save, so it wasn't all that frightening to me. He continues to weaken the center Kingsguard unit, which is now down to 7 models, which is not ideal. And with my trailing Kingsguard unit, that chaff move he pulled on me earlier, the effects of that are not great. If the line could be a bit more cohesive, I'd be in better shape to threaten his line. So other than that, the cannon held on a stubborn 9, so we proceed to Dwarves turn 3. So this is end of Dwarves turn 3. Only charge declared was against the Knights Rima by the warriors in front of them being the only unit that really could conceivably charge. Unfortunately, I made the fundamental mistake of leaving my Kingsguard too close behind the warrior unit, and as a result, upon completing their charge, the Kingsguard unit behind them excuse me, could not complete a wheel to move past them and continue to threaten his main units. So I had to do a swift reform and just move my 3 with that easternmost Kingsguard unit. So they're sort of stuck, and as a result, he has yet another turn of breathing room, essentially, to continue to shoot me and play this disgusting, ridiculous, stupid, very bad, no good gunline style. So that's a little bit frustrating, but we persist. Other moves move up to chaff his Death Star unit, prevent them from breaking out and essentially picking combats, although I'm fairly certain he did not want to do that at this point in the game. And I move up with the warriors and Kingsguard on the left hand side to begin ultimately enacting my game plan. I did make a slight movement mistake on that westernmost unit of Kingsguard. If you're not aware, the way charges against war machines work now, you can't clip them like you used to and still have 5 units attacking. You have to maximize your frontage. So with the one wheel, I still was able to complete the charge and have an overrun into the Queensguard, but I could have positioned it differently so that I could have had even a flank charge after my wheel onto those Queensguard. But the way they are now, they basically have to come in straight and clip with 1 or 2 units. So not ideal, but we actually didn't play that way for this game because my opponent didn't believe me when I told him. You'll see where his Highborn Lancers are. You see how his Highborn Lancers are placed down below. He didn't believe me when I told him, and only upon referencing when I made my charge, he said, yeah, okay, that is right, that's how you're supposed to play, but we'll just continue the way we are now. And I said, fine, no worries. The Rangers moved up with no shooting target available to them, so they're now threatening the Queensguard unit, which is probably what they should have been doing for most of the game, but they secured that flank and are now in a position to start doing some damage to that Death Star. Looks like combat, he failed to do the final wound on the cannon, and it sticks again on a stubborn 9, which is pretty fucking awesome. And then the warriors doing combat with the Knights Rima, I don't think to anyone's surprise, failed to do any wounds and take 1 wound in return. However, they remain on a steadfast magic. It looks like I got through resilience on the weakened Kingsguard unit, and that is all. So that's that. So this is end of Highborn Elves turn 3. As you can tell by my tone of voice, we really start to feel the pain and get increasingly annoyed at this point in the game. I guess I failed to mention on the last turn that the miners arrived, but in his turn he spun his Queensguard around to face them, and shoot the ever-living shit out of them, chipping off a total of 6 models. It looks like probably one of his bolters shot them as well. His only movement appears to have been to shuffle back his Queensguard unit, or sorry, Seaguard unit in the east, to take a little bit more space and have a little bit more shooting and magic opportunities against my army, which is very clearly bearing fruit for him. You can see the graveyard on the left-hand side there with looks like 7 Kingsguard models, 3 Warrior models, and 3 Ranger models, and then the 6 miners that are dead from his round of shooting. And magic. I'm 99% sure he got Scorching Salvo off again in this round, and just continues to slowly deplete my units of their strength. Nevertheless, my warriors do manage to stick in combat with his Knights Rima. I think there are 2 models left in there now, which opens up some options for me, so I'm pretty happy about that. What else did he manage to do here? He did kill my cannon. Pardon me, fuck. He did kill my cannon down in the back line, so his Highborn Lancers are now threatening the anvil. And that's about it. So just death by a million cuts here is basically what this feels like. There's really not a whole lot I can do other than continue to march downfield. I do have the benefit of having my Rangers in his flank now and being able to shoot at that Seaguard unit, so that is pretty nice, and will be nice on my next turn. But yeah, just a slow slog across a wide open field. It's a really, really frustrating thing to play against. So I think you saw in the last photo some of my declared charges. This is Dwarven Hold's turn 4. Finally we begin to exact some revenge and make these knife ears pay for the millions and millions of arrows they've shot at us. So my warrior unit that was nearest to the bolter charges the rear of the Queensguard, and the miners in the front charge the front of the Queensguard. Meanwhile, the trailing Kingsguard unit charged the bolter in the forest, which set them up for an overrun charge into the back of the Queensguard unit. All 3 made it in, so that was pretty exciting to not have a failed charge. And then on the eastern side, in that Knights Rima combat, the 2 units of warriors, the 2 units of Kingsguard, the weakened one in the center with only 7 models, and the trailing one with, I guess they're at a strength of about 12 or so, charged those Knights Rima. So he did use his cover volley on the weakened Kingsguard unit, which made it into the flank of those Knights Rima, but they only made it there with 3 models. So he managed to kill off, another 4 Kingsguard with that absurd cover volley. And all of them made it into combat as well. So the outcome is that the remaining Knights Rima, so I think there was 2 left, they're killed by the Kingsguard, but they do manage to eliminate that remaining 2 models of warriors, and I overrun. So the forward charging unit of Kingsguard charges forward, I think, another maybe 4 or 5 inches, and the smaller unit or depleted unit of 3 Kingsguard overruns towards the east to get out of the way, basically. I think they just made it out of the way with a 3, so it was pretty fortunate to be able to move up off that charge with that easternmost Kingsguard unit as well. In the north, in the woods, I don't think this is too much of a surprise, but the Kingsguard killed the ballista on the charge pretty easily, and then made it into the back of the Queensguard unit and destroyed it pretty much out of hand. I think there was maybe 6 or 7, maybe a few more, maybe 8 models left in that unit, including his caster, his wizard with the shamanism school, and he has that Becalming banner that steals a Veil token that was also in that unit. So they fled. I made him flee from the Kingsguard, and both the miners and warriors followed him off the table. So they're currently off the table, and then the Kingsguard reforms to set him up for a charge into the bolter. And ultimately, as my game plan evolves from here, what I'm hoping to accomplish, and you know what, actually we'll wait until my turn for me to explain what my thought process was, but I had a plan. The big note here is that we finally have done some damage back to this terrible, awful, no good, bad pig of a list, and that feels pretty good. I think it's a moral victory more than anything, but there's still a lot of work to be done here. So this is end of Highborn Elves turn 4. He has charged out of his bunker, or his Death Star, with his Sliver of the Blazing Dawn Prince, and he basically just did a straight up murder on the 6 warriors that were in front of him. Like, the damage output for that item is truly ridiculous, especially when you consider that the guy basically hits on 2s and doubles his wound rolls for every hit. He ends up basically doing very close to 8 wound rolls every turn. So I don't know how that at initiative whatever 9 is in any way balanced or makes any fucking sense, but there you go. That's Highborn Elves for you. So he kills those warriors straight up. We wade through yet another round of I guess weakened, substantially weakened shooting. He's only got the 1 bolter now, and oh, I think my rangers did about 6 wounds to the Sea Guard as well in shooting in the last turn. So that's a nice bonus. So he's down to maybe, I don't know, that looks like 25 maybe, Queensguard plus the characters in there, so substantially weakened shooting, but still shooting nonetheless. And he still, of course, has Scorching Salvo, which I believe gets off yet again in this turn. That's really it. So the combat, his Prince just absolutely destroys that unit. And yeah. And he moves his Highborn Lancers into position to charge my cannon. I think that's probably smart. The anvil's pretty tough and it's unbreakable, so they would probably have been tied up for the rest of the game in trying to dispatch that anvil. And it's actually worth, I think, less points than the cannon. So he was going after the cannon, and I think he planned to come back for the anvil. Okay. So this is end of Dwarves turn 5, and this was a pretty frustrating turn. Both Kingsguard units, so the one in the west that would have been a front charge on his Seaguard unit, needed an 8, so they needed a 5. It was an 8-inch charge, and the Kingsguard unit on the bolter also would have been a 5, so an 8-inch charge needing a roll of 5. The front charging Kingsguard unit made it in, and the Kingsguard unit on the bolter failed their roll on a 4 and shuffled forward, failing to complete my master plan. That unit of Queensguard, in addition to having any other number of ridiculous rules, also has a banner that gives them hard target, or I guess distracting, in the front. So if you charge them in the front, you're hitting them on 5s, which is beyond stupid. And in addition to what they can do both in combat and in shooting, it's I don't know. I just don't understand this army at all. I mean, I guess he only had 5 drops, so I guess it's sort of balanced, but it feels so weird when things are so ridiculously powerful. I don't know. I don't know. It just feels really strange. So that unit of Kingsguard is now in combat all on their own, which is not a recipe for success against this this Death Star that they find themselves in combat with. And so I believe they lose combat by 2 or 3, but manage to stick around. And this is with resilience, mind you. With resilience, with hatred, they've still lost combat because they're hitting on 5s. And had no support in the flank. If I'd made it in on the 8-inch charge on the bolter, I would have had, I think, maybe a 6 to make it in into the flank on the charge on the Sea Guard, and that would have pretty much been good game. As a result, I move up with my last supporting unit of Kingsguard to hopefully salvage this and move up to the face of his prince to try to chaff him up as well. My general's unit, the runesmith, is just sitting on the objective. It's turn 5 now, so I basically need to secure the objective to secure the victory, so he's just chilling there, trying to remain in range of some units to be able to do something in the magic phase. And yeah, so pretty disappointing. I had a plan. I executed the plan, but the dice let me down, and hey, that's the game sometimes. So that Kingsguard unit is going to stick around, but I don't think they're long for this world. And that concludes Dwarves turn 5. Sorry, that was High Elves turn 5. This is Dwarves turn 6 here. So end of Dwarves turn 6. So at this point, you'll see disaster has struck, but I was so fed up with this list that I just wanted to make, Blasdeox pay. I wanted to kill as many elves as I possibly could, so I could have stood back, played like a European, and held on to my points, but I really wanted to table this motherfucker. So I did the 2 poorly advised moves. And charged both my Kingsguard in the north into his prince, which is just was highly poorly advised, but hey, I did it anyway. And then I charged my remaining Kingsguard unit into the last of his Queensguard or Sea Guard. I probably could have just sat back and shot the shit out of them with my Rangers and done more damage and saved my own 315 point unit, but as you see here, the outcome of that combat with the large unit of Kingsguard was that they lost combat and fled, and as a result were run down. I did manage to kill his caster in that fight by allocating, I think, 6 attacks at him, and but regardless, poorly designed, but I had emotions were high, let's just put it that way. I wanted to make this guy pay for all of the noble Dawi he had murdered en route to crossing this field. So the game basically concludes here. I have one more slide, but yeah, I think that's basically it. So he killed that, he ran down that unit of Kingsguard, he won combat with his prince, or we at least pushed. I clearly did no wounds on his prince, even with gleaming, so with -1 to hit there, he still managed to do, I think, 4 or 5 wounds on that Northern Kingsguard unit. So just probably, for my money, one of the more ridiculous magic items in the game, especially when it gets it's a fucking spear, so for whatever reason it gets additional AP on the charge. So really awesome stuff there. So in Highborn Elves turn 6, I think he was just trying to collect any additional points he could here. He decided he wasn't going to kill the anvil, so I think he chose not to complete that charge. His prince clearly mops up the remainder of those Kingsguard, because he can just do that. And then he turns to try to pick up 1 or 2 of these remaining Kingsguard, very, very tiny depleted Kingsguard units to grab their full point value, but fails to do so actually, so that was pretty sweet. And that's pretty much where the game ends. So, obviously Hubris got the best of me. I knew full well what I was doing would probably not result in a total victory, but I just wanted to try. Like, after facing that many shots, I didn't want to sit through another round of shooting from that unit, so I just wanted to try to smash them, and it obviously backfired. I didn't think they would get run down, but yeah. So, I mean, sitting back is just kind of not my thing, especially when you're just playing for fun. If I had just stood there, he maybe... in fact, I don't think he would have, because he would have had to charge. He only would have had one round of combat with his Prince against my Kingsguard, so I could have just chaffed his face, and he wouldn't have got that additional 315 points, and I could have sat back with my other Kingsguard unit and not fought that Seaguard unit and instead shot it. And maybe I actually would have got a 50% value off of it instead of giving him another 315 points. But hey, we play to fight sometimes, so get out of here with that Euro shit. Pretty interesting game. I mean, I think my list is somewhat of a counter to his list. It's just so many bodies and so many units pushing forward, but at the same time, a failed panic test or two in there would have been pretty devastating to how I advance. Like, if my advance was any more ragged than it was, I would have been in really bad shape. And I don't even know if we get into combat in turn 4. It probably would have been turn 5, and in which case I'd have been in pretty dire straits. So, I think it went pretty well, all things considered. The combination of, and if you can't get rid of flaming swords, I don't know how you can approach this army, right? Like, if he's wounding you on 3s or even 2s, if you're a resilience 3 army, like, you're super fucked against this. So I actually feel like this is a very potent gunline list and potentially quite powerful. If you also consider that flaming swords helps you kill monsters very, very easily with that additional +1 to wound. You'd be wounding on 5s in most cases. That's pretty powerful as well, so it's probably pretty decent in this meta. I don't know. I feel like I played pretty well. I think the biggest mistake I made was in spacing, so where my warrior unit charged those Knights Rima. If I could have wheeled past and moved forward more with that unit, I would have had an earlier charge on his Queensguard, and I could have got, I think, 3 Kingsguard units in against that, against his Seaguard unit, and that probably would have been enough, even in the front. So, a couple lessons learned. A pretty good game overall. Blasdeox is a pretty collegial player to get along with. We had a pretty good banter, and overall a good game. So I hope you all enjoyed this report. I hope you, if you are considering running a gun line, you change your mind immediately or go fuck yourself. And until then, this is the Jimmy Boy Hour. I'm Omarcomin. We'll see you next time.